My name is Evelyn, and for most of my life, it's only ever been me and my dad. Our house is often filled with silence, the kind that wraps itself into the corners of every room, sinking into the spaces once filled with my mother's laughter. She was the warmth of our home, and when she passed, something essential left with her. I was just 9, far too young to fully understand what it meant to lose someone so central. Too small to carry the weight of the grief that settled on my father like a second skin. I only knew that everything was different afterward. Dad tried the best he could. He wasn't flawless, but he gave his all. Always a man of structure, he stuck to his role, providing, maintaining order, keeping things steady. He worked hard and made sure I had what I needed. But there was a gap between us, built from quiet grief and all the conversations we never had. He brought me up with rules and routine, his love expressed through control and constant protection that often felt more like confinement. Now I'm 28, and somehow nothing has changed. I'm still living in that same house, under the same roof, with the same man. I wish I could claim it was a choice. But the truth is, my life never had much room to bloom. Not with my father always close, watching, influencing. No one I dated ever seemed to pass his unspoken tests. I assumed it was typical parental worry at first. But over time, I realized it was something more, something harder to name. There were always justifications. He's not dependable. He doesn't see your worth. There's something off about him. And so, any man who came too close slowly vanished. Sometimes because of firm words or cold stares. Other times because his mere presence carried a message I was too afraid to challenge. He never outright said I couldn't love someone else. He didn't have to. The message was always there, in the spaces between what he did and what he left unsaid. So I stayed. I convinced myself it was simpler this way. Maybe I wasn't built for love. Maybe he still needed me here. And maybe in some way I still needed him too. But something has begun to change. It's in the way he watches me now when I return late from work, his gaze filled with something I can't quite define. In the moments when our hands brush in passing and linger too long. In how he avoids talking about my future beyond this house. He never says it aloud, but I feel it in his silence, this quiet notion that I'm meant to be here. With him. I can't say when I first noticed. Maybe the signs had always been there, masked by routine and the language of protection. But now I sense it everywhere, in every room, every pause, every look that feels like more than it should be. I care for my father deeply. He's all I have left in the world. But sometimes I wonder, is love supposed to weigh this much? And will I ever find the strength to let go? It was during a rainy twilight that he brought up the trip. I'd just come in from work, drained and still shaking off the chill, when I found him waiting in the kitchen doorway. There was something different in his posture, gentler yet determined. "I thought we might get away for a bit," he said, calm but with a tone that suggested the decision was already set in stone. I blinked. A trip. Just a few days. Just us. It's all arranged. He slid a train ticket onto the counter. Private compartment. A scenic ride through the countryside, trees stretching on forever, time slowing with each passing mile. I should have said no, but I didn't. Maybe I was craving change, or maybe I just didn't know how to refuse him. 2 days later, we were on our way. The station was cloaked in morning fog, the quiet kind that made the world feel suspended. I followed him across the platform, the sound of my suitcase wheels tapping against the wet ground. He had booked an entire compartment, just for the two of us. It felt vintage, almost surreal. Velvet-covered seats, polished wood, a small table by the window. "Settling in okay?" he asked, setting down his bag and easing into the seat across from mine. I nodded, fingertips tracing the edge of the cushion. The train lurched softly, pulling us away from the station. We sat in silence, the countryside beginning to blur past the window. My father leaned back, his eyes fixed on me, watching with a gaze I couldn't quite read. "I can't even remember the last time we went anywhere together," he said eventually, his voice calm, touched with something thoughtful. "Not since I was a kid," I replied. "Before Mom." The words caught in my throat, unexpectedly difficult to say. He didn't blink. "Yes, before that." I turned to the window, watching as buildings melted into open land and the sky opened wide above it. It was serene, though touched with something quiet and unsettling. Not long after, he rose and slipped off his coat, placing it carefully near the door. "You look very nice today," he remarked, his voice even but purposeful. I blinked, surprised. "What?" He motioned toward me, a faint smile forming on his lips. "I don't say it often enough. You've grown into a truly lovely woman." The compliment hung in the air a beat too long. My father wasn't a stranger to kind words, but this time, something in the way he said it felt different. Heavier. "Thanks," I managed, unsure what else to say. He held my gaze a moment longer, eyes dark and unreadable, then casually reached for a small travel bag beside his seat, producing a bottle of wine. "Thought I'd bring something nice for the journey," he said, his tone lighter now. "Might as well enjoy ourselves." He poured us each a glass, the wine catching the dim light with a warm, crimson shimmer. I hesitated before accepting mine, aware of how closely he was watching as I brought it to my lips. "To us," he said, his voice soft but deliberate. "To being together." I clinked my glass against his, offering a slight smile. "To family." The train's gentle motion accompanied the stillness, the wheels humming a steady rhythm beneath us. Outside, twilight crept slowly over the landscape. The warmth of the wine settled in, along with something else I couldn't quite name. My father sat close, his presence unusually weighty in the quiet cabin. "You remind me of her," he said eventually, eyes focused on the swirling wine in his glass. I tensed. "You mean Mom?" He nodded, his gaze distant. "You really do." A chill traced down my spine. I turned toward him, studying the way he sat, comfortably leaned back, fingers tapping slowly on the chair's arm, lips tilted in the hint of some private thought. "Dad," I started, my voice hesitant. He didn't respond right away. Then he leaned forward, gently brushing a loose strand of hair from my face. "You're just remarkable," he said, voice soft and full of something unspoken. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't simply a vacation. This was something else. The train continued its sway, the tracks humming beneath us, the dim compartment cloaked in shadows and soft lamplight. My untouched glass rested near the window, while his had been slowly emptied. Outside, the golden light of sunset cast long shadows across the landscape, the world slipping into a blur beyond the glass. The hush inside the compartment felt intimate, almost too close. He adjusted his seat, stretching out slightly before shifting nearer to me. The cushion gave under his weight, and his nearness made my breath catch. "You seem tense," he said gently, voice lower now. "Work's been wearing you down." I gave a faint laugh. "That's probably true." "You should let yourself rest," he replied. After a pause, "Let me help." I turned toward him, confused. "What do you mean?" He raised a hand, reaching toward my shoulder. "A little massage." I hesitated. "Dad, I'm not sure that's—" "I used to help your mother like this." He cut in quietly, his hand hovering. "She always carried her stress right here." His tone made me shiver. As the train shifted around a curve, his hands found my shoulders. At first, just a light pressure, fingers warming through the thin fabric. I sat unmoving, uncertain whether to pull away, uncertain what it meant that I didn't. "You're always so wound up," he whispered, breath grazing my ear. I stared forward, watching the dim reflection in the dark window. We looked like two people sitting too close in the quiet, familiar, but not quite right. His hands moved slowly, confidently, as though he knew every line of tension by memory. "Better, isn't it?" he asked. I gave a small nod, unsure if I believed it. The air felt dense, thick with silence that said far more than either of us had. I should step away. I should say something. But I didn't. Instead, I sat there, letting the warmth of his hands seep into my skin, letting the train carry us forward into the deepening night. The steady rhythm of the train filled the silence between us, a soft, hypnotic hum that seemed to stretch the moment longer than it should have lasted. I kept my gaze fixed on the window, watching the dark countryside blur past, though I wasn't really seeing it. "I think I'm tired," I murmured finally, my voice barely above a whisper. My father's hands slowed their movements on my shoulders, his fingertips lingering for just a second before pulling away. "Of course," he said, his voice warm, almost indulgent. "You've been working too much. You never take time to rest." I nodded, though I wasn't sure if exhaustion was truly the reason I felt this heaviness in my chest. "You should stretch out a little," he continued, shifting beside me. "Here, put your legs up. It'll help." I hesitated, unsure. But before I could think of a response, he patted the seat beside him. "Trust me," he added, his tone light but firm. "You'll feel better." Something in his voice made it hard to refuse. I shifted, pulling my legs up onto the seat, stretching them out carefully. The movement felt unnatural at first, too intimate, too strange, but I told myself it was just a moment of comfort, nothing more. The train swayed gently as my father reached for my legs, his hands warm as they found my calves. He started slow, pressing his thumbs into the tense muscles, kneading carefully. "You hold a lot of tension here," he noted. I swallowed hard. "I guess so." His hands moved with practiced ease, slow and deliberate, traveling from my ankles to my calves, his fingertips working into the muscles, as though he had done this 1,000 times before. I tried to focus on the sensation, on the way my body felt lighter beneath his touch, but there was something else, something beneath the surface that I didn't want to name. He was quiet as he worked, his breathing even, his touch firm but careful. It was just a massage, just a moment between father and daughter. And yet, the weight of it settled deep in my chest, making it hard to breathe. I wanted to speak, to say something that would break the silence, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I let the train carry us forward into the night, into something unknown, something I wasn't sure I was ready to face. The hum of the train soothed me, rocking me gently into a haze between wakefulness and sleep. My father's hands had long since left my legs, but the warmth of his touch lingered in my skin, an imprint I couldn't quite shake. The compartment felt smaller than before, the air heavier, thick with something unspoken. I curled my legs up slightly, resting my head against the cushioned back of the seat, letting my eyelids flutter shut. The train's rhythmic motion lulled me into something close to sleep, but not quite. I was aware of him beside me, the subtle shift of his weight, the way he exhaled slowly as if he, too, were caught in the strange quiet between us. Then, I heard the sound of a book opening. I blinked, turning slightly in his direction. From his bag, he had retrieved a slim leather-bound book, the cover worn at the edges like something long-loved. He cradled it gently in one hand. His voice was calm, nearly quiet. "I used to read to you at night," he said, "when you were small." I swallowed. "I remember. Want me to read something now?" It caught me off guard, not unwelcome, just unexpected. It had been years since bedtime stories were part of my life, but the idea, here and now, felt strangely comforting. I shifted, making myself more comfortable. "Sure." A faint smile flickered on his lips. He leaned back into his seat, angling the book toward the soft overhead glow, and began to read. His voice was low and unhurried, flowing through the compartment like a gentle stream. The words blended into one another, quiet and rhythmic, more music than meaning. I didn't really take in the story itself, just the feeling of it, of him, his voice wrapping around me like something old and familiar. My eyes drifted closed, letting the sound wash over me. For a while it felt okay. It felt safe. But then, the mood shifted, subtly. I couldn't pinpoint exactly when it changed. Perhaps when his tone softened in certain moments, or when I heard the soft tap of his fingers against the leather binding like he'd forgotten he was even reading. Or maybe it was the closeness, the warmth radiating beside me, the slight, barely perceptible leaning in. I didn't open my eyes. I didn't move, but I sensed it. Something closer, something heavier. The train rocked gently along the tracks, the outside world nothing but darkness streaking past. It hit me, for the first time, how little space had ever existed between us. I had always been near him, always under his care. And now, here in this narrow, softly lit room, I wasn't sure if I even knew what it meant to be apart. He kept reading, his tone steady and low, guiding me toward sleep that never fully came. And somewhere deep within, something stirred awake. I shifted slightly, feeling how the cushion gave beneath me, how the air in the room seemed thicker than before. His reading slowed, his gaze lingering between words. I could feel it, even with my eyes closed. "You're falling asleep," he murmured. I opened my eyes partway and met his. He wasn't too close, but close enough that I could see every detail in the soft lighting. The way he looked at me was hard to read. "Maybe," I said, swallowing. His smile was small. "Then rest." I hesitated before leaning back again, letting my eyelids fall. My limbs felt warm, almost too warm. I tried to let his voice carry me into sleep. But I wasn't asleep. Not truly. I noticed everything. The gentle sway of the train, my own slow breathing, and most of all, his presence filling every inch of silence between us. I tried to tell myself it was ordinary, that there was nothing unusual about this, that it was just us, like it had always been. But for the first time, I saw it clearly, how little distance had ever existed. How much of my life had revolved around his nearness, his protection, his subtle pull. Something shifted in my chest, tight and certain. I didn't know if it was dread, or something else entirely. I needed out. I needed space. Suddenly, I sat upright, as though waking from a dream I didn't want to understand. My heartbeat quickened, unexplained. I think I need a breath," I said, my voice barely above the hum of the train. He looked surprised. "Now." I was already reaching for the handle. "Just a minute." He didn't stop me, but I felt his eyes on my back as I stepped out into the corridor, cool air brushing my skin like a jolt. I let out a shaky breath, pressing my palms against the polished paneling, trying to steady myself. Something had shifted, or maybe it had always been this way, and I was only just beginning to notice.